Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Now, as you guys can see from the title of this video, it's obvious from the jump what this is about, and if you have, like legitimate trauma triggers, just emotionally upset by this topic, I have over 400 other videos for you to watch, as well as a bunch of cat shorts, so, no offense if this topic, it just isn't your cup of tea, although obviously you clicked on it for some reason, and this is going to be based off of a blog post I published on the 31st of July 2023, and if the time allows, I will also be doing the video will also include a blog post I did last year on the 11th of September 2024, writing historical fiction about 9/11, like important things to keep in mind, as well as the aftermath, which will be if I have, enough time to get through that. So enough blabbing, and let's just get to it. Oh, and also, warning, can't start without that, besides the obvious, like, what the topic is, Any comments from conspiracy theorists will be deleted the moment I see them, and the commenters blacklisted. I have zero tolerance for people who deny well-established historical facts. Like facts, these are actual documented facts. Like, get out of your damn tinfoil basement and insult the memory of those who died and the trauma experienced by survivors. Like, conspiracy theorists are just gross, like in general, but particularly for events that are well within living memory. Oh, I have no words for these losers. So anyway, while I don't believe certain historical events should be completely off limits for historical novels, I just don't get people say, oh, don't write historical fiction about the Holocaust or 9/11, which is, within the realm of late contemporary historical fiction by this point. Like, if you're genuinely upset by certain topics in historical fiction or historical films or TV shows, guess what? Just don't read them. Don't watch them. Don't write them yourself. Like, problem solved. Like, but don't tell other people, oh, you can only write about this and certain things are off limits forever because they're traumatic. But anyway, there are special considerations to keep in mind when depicting events well within living memory. That creates even more of an obligation to strive for the utmost accuracy and respect. Here are some of the most important things to keep in mind when researching and writing late contemporary historical fiction featuring 9/11. I should also mention, last year I did a video talking about why I decided to write my own historical fiction about this day and the aftermath, and how I structured it. So I will leave a link to that video at the end of the channel. So let's get on. Number one, the only people in the Twin Towers and the Pentagon when the planes hit were employees. The World Trade Center only opened to the public at 9 o'clock for things like the windows on the World Restaurant and the rooftop observation deck. And it should go without saying that being in the Pentagon, how would you not know this? It requires major security clearance. The one exception is the World Trade Center Mall on the concourse level. Number two, look up the list of tenants on each floor of the building at the World Trade Center complex to figure out if your character or characters might believably be working for any of those companies or whatever, like organizations, charities, nonprofits, like Port Authority, whatever. These were overwhelmingly corporate businesses in fields like law, banking, investment, and insurance. It's not going to be like some run-of-the-mill little boutique or something like that. Number three, there were a total of 7 buildings in the complex, not just the 2 towers. The others were the 22-story Marriott Hotel, 3 World Trade Center, 2 9-story office buildings, 4 and 5, an 8-story building serving as the U.S. Customs House of New York, number 6, and the 47-story 7 World Trade Center. Conspiracy theorists are so obsessed with it. Again, I will immediately delete comments from conspiracy theorists. You're just wasting your time and mine by writing out your verbal vomit. Number 4, it won't feel believable if you force your character or characters into any of those buildings when there's no natural reason for them to be there. And that should apply for pretty much any historical event with a real, being in Poland on the eve of World War II. That's a really big popular trope among people. It seemed like you're just forcing characters into a place they wouldn't be anyway, just for extra dramatic tension. It needs to work with the story and the characters. So, for example, would they normally eat breakfast at one of the Marriott Hotel's restaurants or go to their gym in the morning? Or do they already have the habit of visiting a friend or relative who works in one of the buildings? Number 5, other buildings in the immediate vicinity, like the supermarket of 130 Cedar Street, the apartments at 90 West Street, and St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church, were also destroyed when hundreds of tons of flaming debris fell on them. Number 6, Everyone below Canal Street was ordered by Mayor Giuliani to evacuate at 11:02 a.m. on the day of the attacks. But, of course, some people might, want to stay around because, essential workers, obviously the police and the fire people, the firefighters couldn't leave, and the doctors, maybe, if they're visiting a loved one who was taken to hospital, they would have permission or plead with the authorities. I have to go downtown to be with my, child or spouse or whoever who's in hospital. Number 7, the maritime evacuation of Lower Manhattan by ferries, the Coast Guard, fireboats, and various types of private boats was the biggest in history. About 500,000 people were taken to Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey, and Staten Island. Even more people than were rescued at Dunkirk. Number 8, many other people evacuated on foot, walking over the Brooklyn Bridge or north towards Midtown and Uptown Manhattan. They didn't have to worry about getting hit by cars, since all cars except emergency vehicles were ordered off the roads. Number 9, the Port Authority and MTA closed all the tunnels and bridges under their jurisdiction, and subways, buses, and PATH trains were all shut down. Number 10, the North Tower was hit at 8:46 a.m. and the South Tower at 9:02 or 9:03. It was very close to when the time was changing, and the Pentagon at 9:37. Number 11, the North Tower was hit from floors 93 to 99, and the South Tower from 77 to 85. No one above floor 91 survived in the North Tower, and only 18 people, that's the number I've heard, maybe it's a little bit more, escaped from above or in the impact zone in the South Tower, because they were lucky enough to find the one intact stairwell in that area. And I mentioned in my video about the book 102 Minutes. I think there was was it 2 years ago or just 1 year ago? But whatever, there was this so much shocking miscommunication. I mean, beyond the obvious reasons of emergency, totally unexpected terrorist attack, but there was just so much lack of communication between everyone involved in this. Not nearly enough people knew and got the word out. There was one intact stairwell. So many more people could have evacuated out and survived if only people had been communicating better through everybody. Number 12, several hundred people outside of the Pentagon witnessed a third plane crashing. They were stuck in very slow-moving traffic on South Washington Boulevard or in nearby buildings. The plane took out 5 traffic lights on its way down, hit lampposts, and knocked out one lamppost onto a taxi windshield. Number 13. Since the 4th plane, Flight 93, crashed into a field, there was only one known witness to the actual crash. A number of other people, however, saw and heard it flying overhead prior to that final moment. Number 14. Only 20 people were pulled alive from the rubble at Ground Zero, called the Pile by New Yorkers, which I had no idea that's what the natives actually called it until I started doing serious research. Since this is a case where very few survivors existed versus hundreds or thousands, I would avoid having a fictional character be rescued. It's like putting made-up people among the members of a small house of worship, school, or summer camp in its earliest years of existence, when everyone who is part of that history is well documented. Any fictional characters would stand out among that tiny real group, and I understand why many fellow historical fiction writers would want to do this for not just 9/11 historical fiction, but just for anything. Oh, this is cool. Oh, my own family started this church, or my spouse was going to this summer camp, or my father-in-law created this hotel, or my grandparents survived this concentration camp. But you still want to be realistic. If there's only 50 people who were in something, and we all know their names, or we know there were only 50 people or whatever, fictional characters are going to stick out. Just err on the side of caution and put them in a situation where it's more likely there would be a much larger group of people, and a few fictional characters would effortlessly blend into those group of real life people. Number 15. Likewise, I wouldn't have any fictional characters surviving above floor 91 in the North Tower, or at or above the impact zone in the South Tower. Only 18 people survived the latter, and no one survived the former, although I have heard of at least one person who came down from the 92nd floor, but unfortunately, didn't really make it. Everything was crashing down around them by the time they were getting out of the building. If anyone else had, we'd know their names and stories, and they sure as hell wouldn't be fictional characters. Number 16. A noxious smell blanketed the air of Lower Manhattan, and debris of all sorts coated the ground. After the towers collapsed, giant mushroom clouds of even more foul debris consumed that part of the city and sent people running for their lives. Many people opened the doors of their homes and businesses to provide sanctuary to strangers fleeing from the clouds. Number 17. For months, that toxic stench lingered and carried all the way into Brooklyn, parts of Queens, Midtown, and Upper Manhattan, and parts of Staten Island, depending on which way the wind was blowing and how strongly. People who lived several miles away had to keep their windows closed for the 100 days the fire at Ground Zero burnt. Number 18. I would err on the side of caution and not put fictional characters in a small business or organization at the World Trade Center. If we're talking about a company that only employed a few dozen people and may not even have had anyone in the office yet by the time either plane struck, or only had a few employees present, the presence of a fictional character will really stand out and might upset the real-life survivors. Better to stick them in a company with lots of employees like Cantor Fitzgerald, Aon, Morgan Stanley, or Martian McLennan. Number 19. Know who exactly was on each floor. You don't want to be embarrassed by putting your character or characters on a mechanical floor that just stored equipment or a floor used by an entirely different business. Number 20. It adds a lot more dramatic tension if a character's survival is unknown until after the attacks. If the reader already knows, for example, someone left the building to retrieve a pager left at home, or is stuck in traffic, that kind of spoils the full emotional impact when the other characters discover this. Number 21. Many people were in planes that were forced to land at the nearest airport or rerouted back overseas. Flights coming from Asia and the Pacific mostly landed at Vancouver, while flights coming from Europe had to land in Canada if there wasn't enough fuel to turn around. Air traffic over North America resumed on the 13th of September, with the stranded flights continuing on to their destinations first. Limited service for everyone else resumed after that, with a backlog that took a few days to work through. Number 22. Many other buildings nationwide were closed and evacuated, and schools and workplaces dismissed people early. When I went to Herder Hall for my 1 p.m. History of the Enlightenment class at UMass Amherst, I found the doors locked, and I have a whole story I could tell at nearby Haggis Mall, which was basically like a public, I don't know, thoroughfare is word, like a public square. That's the best word. Pretty much like across the way from Herder Hall, there was this nutcase missionary talking, like saying, oh, he was said so many crazy, like offensive things, like particularly some of the people who had just died in the attacks were now in hell because they committed so-called sins like being gay and having premarital sex. Dude, go to hell yourself. Last but not least, keep in mind that whatever tragic historical event you might be writing about, the story doesn't end when the event itself does. An equally compelling story is how the survivors rebuild their lives and heal, and the changes in the greater world wrought by those events. And let's just check on the time. Okay, so it's like 12 minutes. I have more than enough time to get to writing about the aftermath, important details and historical facts to keep in mind. And so, as I just mentioned in the prior section, a historical story about a tragic event doesn't automatically end when the event itself does. I know too many people just don't realize this. I mean, I'm not saying they're ignorant, but it's just, the popular conception, yay, World War II is over, the camps are liberated, like, yeah, everything is over now, happy ever after. But an equally compelling story is how the survivors rebuild their lives and heal, and the changes in the greater world wrought by those events. Depending upon how you choose to structure your story, it might be part of the same book or a sequel. I'm also well aware of how some people believe certain historical events should be off limits for fictional treatment, as I said at the beginning, but I've never agreed with such an attitude. As long as you strive for the utmost accuracy and treat the events respectfully, there's nothing inherently wrong with choosing that setting. And again, if that is so, legitimately triggering or emotionally upsetting to you, guess what? Don't read it. Don't watch those films or TV shows. Don't write them yourself. Bang, problem solved. Some key things to keep in mind for writing about the aftermath of 9/11. Number 1, though the internet existed and was becoming much more mainstream, we didn't have instantaneous access to every bit of breaking news. I know it's really hard for people under a certain age to comprehend that kind of world we lived in not that long ago. We had to rely on these old-fashioned things called newspapers and TV news and news magazines. Many people still use dial-up modems to access the internet. I still remember that noise. Like, who doesn't if you're a certain age? And that made it slower to load. A subscription to newspapers.com or the New York Times archives is a great research tool. Some libraries offer access for free, even from your own home, and I'm constantly taking advantage of my current local library systems. Free access to the New York Times, and the best thing about it is you do not have to be at the library to access it. I use it all the time for my own historical fiction about many different subjects over many eras. Number 3. Don't just read the major stories in those papers. The stories of the ordinary individuals affected are just as important, particularly when you're presumably writing about that very kind of people, not famous people. Number 4, trauma and grief aren't one size fits all. Like, this can't be said enough about any issue or event. Not everyone breaks down crying in response to those things. Some of us are wired towards dissociation and repression as self-protective coping mechanisms, which we have no control over. I've mentioned this in some prior videos I did for Mental Health May about my issues with non-pathological dissociation and the like. The brain detects an incoming traumatic stimulus and instantaneously dissociates. Other people respond through anger and constantly being on edge. Not everyone immediately displays signs of PTSD due to focusing on just trying to get through the immediate aftermath. And like PTSD, so many people, I'm looking at a meme or an image I have in this post, like so many people, they just think, oh, it's not being able to move on after a traumatic event, but what it actually is includes, unwanted memories, negative self-image, hypervigilance, emotional distress, sense of threat, intrusive thoughts, avoidance, isolation, memory problems, anger, guilt, shame, anxiety, depression, excessive blame, dissociation, like I just mentioned, being easily scared, flashbacks, nightmares, sleeping problems, and self-destructive behaviors. Number 5, most survivors were in and out of hospital if they needed medical attention at all. Sadly, EMTs, doctors, and nurses radically overestimated the amount of incoming patients they'd receive and prepared way too many beds and emergency kits. The people who spent months in hospital had severe burns, broken bones, and crushing injuries from unluckily being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Number 6, about 88% of Americans and 65% of Britons supported the invasion of Afghanistan. I was in a very small minority of people who opposed it and still stand by those views today, although slightly modified in that I think we should have, of course, gone the people who did it, but we just badly bungled everything in Afghanistan. I shouldn't even need to spell out why. Our fight should have been with Al-Qaeda, the ones who actually attacked us, not the entire country of Afghanistan. Number 7, there was a huge uptick in Islamophobia, like real Islamophobia, not just, oh, you're saying negative things about jihadists and anti-Arab racism. Again, actual anti-Arab racism, not just you're rightly criticizing fanaticism and Hamas and terrorism. This, actually innocent people, painting them with all the same broad brush instead of actually critiquing legitimately bad things about the history and theology and terrorism. As someone who grew up around many Muslims, I knew most of them are normal, kind people who have nothing to do with terrorism, or at least particularly the ones who came to the West before a certain date and they were liberal, moderate, secular people. And, the ones I knew, they came to the U.S. to escape Islamic theocracy in countries like Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. I mean, of course, that's way too political and off topic to get into here, but so many of the ones coming to the West these days, they just don't have the same motivations and secular, more liberal, moderate beliefs and lifestyles as the ones I grew up around. But again, that's a way off topic thing for a whole other video. These were political and religious moderates, not nutjob mullahs. But if the only Muslims or Arabs you've ever heard about are murderous terrorists, you'll be more likely to assume the worst of everyone. However, the existence of true Islamophobia shouldn't preclude legit criticism of disturbing things in Islamic history, culture, society, and theology. And again, that's a whole complicated topic for another video. Number 8, non-Muslim and non-Middle Easterners who superficially looked the part were subject to discrimination, harassment, and attacks too. For example, turban-wearing Sikhs, religious Jewish women who covered their hair, anyone with brown skin and an accent. So many people, they're just genuinely ignorant about what and who Sikhs are, and they started attacking them, assuming, oh, you're a Middle Eastern Arab terrorist, and they're not even Muslims or from the actual Middle East, they're from India. Number 9, the noxious smell coming from Ground Zero, which New Yorkers called the Pile, lasted for months, and the wind blew it all the way into Brooklyn and parts of Queens and Staten Island or other parts of the city as well, depending on where you lived. People had to keep their windows closed to escape it and regularly clean the toxic residue building up on them. Number 10, there was uninterrupted news coverage for 93 hours, canceling all other programming. The only exception were children's channels like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. Number 11, flights resumed on the 13th of September, as I said prior, starting with the people whose flights were grounded. It took several days for all these flights to resume. Limited air travel followed, though many people were understandably too nervous to fly, and some people still haven't flown again to this day. Number 12, subways, buses, path trains, tunnels, and bridges in New York were shut down until further notice. Resumption of service varied by route and location. Number 13, an estimated 400,000 people, as we know of to date, have suffered negative health effects from breathing in the toxic morass from the pile. People working on site had the most compromised health, but everyone in the vicinity was potentially affected too. Side effects include cancer, asthma, mesothelioma, heart disease, traumatic injuries, kidney disease, and COPD. Number 14. People below Canal Street in New York, except for emergency workers, were ordered to evacuate. Most people stayed within the city, though some escaped farther afield if they were lucky enough. They have a summer home in the Hamptons, or they decide to just indefinitely take off work and school because they're so traumatized, or they're worried about their health, or they just need a mental health break and go to the Poconos or something, a summer camp retreat, until they feel safe enough to return to the city. Not everyone was we must rebuild as soon as possible, we won't let them win. Some people they did what they felt they needed to do for their mental health or their physical health, just stepped away in a safer place where they could recover, and it was more peaceful. They weren't constantly surrounded by reminders of what tragically, just traumatically happened to them. Number 15, many people on the extreme left shamefully responded by blaming the victim instead of condemning the terrorists who did it. There's never an excuse for terrorism and murdering innocent people. I should not even have to say this, particularly what happened yesterday as of the date of this filming. You know what that was. If your politics require you to justify that, you have failed as a human being. I shouldn't even have to explain why this is. Number 16, many survivors still suffer from PTSD. Trauma does not have an expiration date. Number 17, missing posters and makeshift memorials went up around New York City and remained up for weeks, months, over a year in some places. Number 18, over 1,000 victims as of this date have yet to be found, and many victims have only been identified by bone shards, teeth, and skin from shoes and clothing. Because of DNA degradation, tens of thousands of bone and tissue fragments can't find matches. Number 19, we all heal and process trauma in different ways. One person might be immensely helped by art therapy or dance therapy, while another benefits most from traditional psychotherapy and keeping a journal. Other people might do best with guided meditation or whatever works best for your character. Number 20, many films, TV shows, video games, and songs were yanked, edited, or delayed because of jokes or comments about things like bombs on planes, images of the World Trade Center, or content that too closely resembled real-life events. And so, thank you very much for listening all the way through to the end. Let me know in the comments if you think I missed anything or you want to elaborate on something further. Remember, again, I'm deleting any comments from loony, kooky conspiracy theorists. That has no place on my channel. I also don't really have any tolerance for ultra politicized comments, but just let me know what you think of this topic in general, late contemporary historical fiction in general. When do you think late contemporary or contemporary historical fiction begins and ends? What do you think the current cutoff date for very late contemporary historical is? Would you say 20 years in the past and no further than it would more or less be contemporary? What your own memories of 9/11 are. If you lived through it, you're old enough to have memories of it. If you were too young or you weren't alive then, general, what are your thoughts on this tragic anniversary? So just all sorts of whatever comments you guys can think of. And thanks very much for watching all the way through to the end, and I will see you soon. Bye.